The city never slept. Lights flickered like stars, people rushed by like the currents of an endless river, and Ali stood in the middle of it all, feeling more alone than ever. He had it all: the apartment with a view, a job that paid well, friends who laughed at his jokes, and yet there was an emptiness inside him that nothing seemed to fill. The noise of success, the endless pursuit of more, had drowned out the still, small voice inside him, the one that used to guide him, the one that used to tell him he was never truly alone. But that voice had grown quieter with every passing year. Ali had everything that should have made him happy. But as the years slipped away, he realized that happiness wasn't something you found in achievements or possessions. It was something you had to seek deep within, in the spaces you often ignored, the quiet moments, the faith you abandoned, the people you forgot to help. It was in that moment, standing on the balcony overlooking the sprawling city, that Ali knew his life needed to change. The question wasn't whether he could find peace. It was whether he was willing to face the quiet, unspoken battle inside of him to reclaim it. And so began the journey of faith, one that would take him into the depths of his own soul, to places he never thought he'd go, but places he had always needed to find. Ali stood at the window, staring out into the bustling streets of the city. The noise from honking cars, busy pedestrians, and the flashing lights of the modern world felt overwhelming. He was 25, and though he had everything he ever wanted, a well-paying job, an apartment in the heart of the city, a social life full of friends, he felt empty. Deep down, a void gnawed at him, a sense of dissatisfaction that nothing seemed to fill. He had achieved what everyone around him considered success, but something was missing. He had drifted away from his faith over the years. As a child, he had been taught the basics of Islam, the 5 pillars, the importance of prayer, the teachings of the Quran. But now, in the whirlwind of his busy life, prayer had become something of the past. His connection to Allah had weakened, and he found himself questioning the very purpose of his existence. The moment he could feel his emptiness most was when he was alone in his apartment, staring at the blank walls or scrolling through his phone, searching for something to fill the space. He thought about how he once felt a sense of peace during the moments of prayer. Those had been the times when everything seemed right, when the chaos of the world faded away and all that was left was tranquility. He had tried several times to go back to his roots, but it never lasted. His work was demanding, his friends often invited him out to events, and he couldn't seem to break free from the distractions. But one day, as he was walking home from work, a thought came to him that stopped him in his tracks. What if he could change? What if he could rediscover the peace he once had? What if his faith could guide him through this empty void? He paused for a moment, feeling a sudden urge to reconnect. The decision was a quiet whisper in his heart, but it felt stronger than any of the worldly desires that had ruled his life. The next morning, Ali woke up early, a rarity for him. The sun was barely peeking through the window, casting a soft golden light over his room. He didn't reach for his phone, nor did he jump straight into his daily routine. Instead, he sat on the edge of his bed, taking a deep breath, and whispered the words he hadn't said in a long time. Bismillah, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. It felt like a beginning, a small, simple act of remembering Allah, but it was a significant one. Ali decided he would take it slow. He wasn't going to force himself to change overnight, but he would start with the basics. He would pray once a day, starting with Fajr, the pre-dawn prayer. He had heard that starting small, with consistency, was the key. Later that week, Ali found himself in a mosque, something he hadn't done in years. The quiet peace of the place, the smell of incense, the soft murmur of prayers, everything felt comforting, almost as though the walls were embracing him. It was during the prayer that something inside him stirred. For the first time in a long while, his heart felt at ease. It wasn't about perfection, it was about being present, surrendering to the Creator. After the prayer, Ali sat on the edge of the prayer hall, watching the sun rise in the distance. He was surprised to see an elderly man walk toward him, with a soft smile on his face. The man sat beside him without a word, and then turned to him. "You've just come back, haven't you?" the man asked gently. Ali nodded, his throat tight. He didn't know how to explain the turbulence within him, the uncertainty of where to start. But this stranger, this man with wisdom etched in his features, somehow understood. "I was once like you," the man said, his eyes twinkling with kindness. "I had everything. a successful career, a family, a life full of achievements. But I was lost. I felt the same emptiness you do now. Ali listened intently. His curiosity piqued. And then, the man continued, I decided to turn back to Allah. It wasn't easy, it wasn't fast. But with every prayer, with every small step, I felt the burden lightened. And slowly, Allah filled that void in my heart. Ali felt a wave of relief. He didn't know if he was ready to be the man this elderly person described, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was hope for him. Days turned into weeks, and Ali remained committed to his small changes. He woke up for Fajr every morning, read a page or two from the Quran, and prayed his obligatory prayers. Slowly, he felt a change in himself. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, but a subtle shift within his heart. However, life didn't get any easier. Work became more demanding, and his friends continued to invite him to events that didn't align with his new commitments. The old temptations pulled at him, and sometimes he found himself torn between the life he used to live and the one he was trying to build. One evening, his friends invited him to an upscale bar for a night out. Ali hesitated, feeling the weight of his new journey. But the pressure to conform was strong. His friends teased him for being boring and overly serious. As he stood at the entrance, ready to walk in, he felt a pull. He remembered the peace of the mosque, the comfort of his prayers. Ali turned around and walked away. He didn't want to compromise his faith for temporary pleasures. It was a test, and though it wasn't easy, he passed. In the weeks that followed, Ali's commitment to his faith deepened. He sought out books on Islamic history, read lectures on Islamic philosophy, and connected with others who shared his desire to grow spiritually. His journey was not just about prayer, but about understanding the wisdom of Islam, its values and its teachings. Ali's faith began to transform his daily interactions. He found himself treating people with more kindness, showing patience in difficult situations, and feeling a sense of gratitude that he hadn't felt in years. He learned that Islam wasn't just about rituals, it was about character, about striving to be better, to align one's heart with Allah's will. One evening, as Ali sat in his favorite corner of the mosque, reading a book on the life of the Prophet Muhammad, he realized something profound. This wasn't just about finding peace for himself anymore. It was about helping others. He had so much to share, so much to offer, and he knew his journey wasn't just for him but for those around him as well. And so, Ali's journey continued. Every day was a step closer to the peace he had been searching for all along, and every day brought him closer to understanding the true purpose of his life. Months passed, and Ali's life began to transform in ways he never imagined. His connection with Allah had deepened, and as he walked through life, he found his perspective shifting. It wasn't just his relationship with God that had changed, but also how he saw the world around him. The noise of the city had lost its power over him. He had learned to slow down, to take moments for gratitude, and to reflect on his actions before making decisions. But the true change in Ali wasn't only internal. He began to notice how his own spiritual growth began to affect those around him. One day at work, Ali was faced with a difficult situation. A colleague named Sarah, whom he had always admired for her work ethic, was dealing with a personal crisis. She had recently experienced a tragic loss in her family, and though she appeared strong outwardly, Ali could see the weight of her sorrow in her eyes. He had noticed her often staying late at work, pushing through her pain, and not taking time to grieve properly. In the past, Ali might have avoided this uncomfortable situation, too busy with his own life to care. But now, feeling a sense of responsibility as a Muslim, he knew that this was his opportunity to help, not just by offering advice, but by offering kindness, patience, and understanding. He approached Sarah one afternoon after everyone had left for the day. "Hey, Sarah, are you doing okay?" Ali asked, his voice soft but sincere. Sarah looked up from her desk, her eyes red-rimmed. "I'm fine, just trying to keep going," she said, forcing a smile. Ali could sense the walls she had built around herself, the barrier between her pain and the world. But instead of pushing or giving her platitudes, he simply sat beside her. "You don't have to carry it all alone," Ali said quietly. "I know it's hard, but sometimes just sharing your burden can lighten the load. And if you ever want to talk or just have a moment of peace, I'm here." Sarah blinked, clearly caught off guard. Thanks, Ali. I don't know why I never thought of that before. Ali smiled gently. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us that we don't have to do everything by ourselves. Life is hard, but we're not meant to carry it alone. And Allah promises that He will ease our burdens. For the first time in weeks, Sarah let herself cry silently as Ali offered his presence, giving her the space to feel and grieve. It wasn't about solving her problems or fixing her situation. It was about being there, showing compassion, and reminding her that she wasn't alone. Over the next few weeks, Ali continued to check in on Sarah, offering small gestures of kindness and support. Slowly, Sarah began to open up, letting go of some of her walls. The two of them began sharing deeper conversations, talking about faith, healing, and how to cope with life's hardships. It became clear that through his simple act of kindness, Ali had made a real difference in her life. Though Ali had made significant strides in his spiritual journey, the path ahead would not always be smooth. There were still many tests awaiting him. One of the most significant tests would come in the form of a decision that would challenge his priorities and his commitment to faith. Ali had been offered a new job, a highly prestigious one, with a large salary increase, a promotion, and the kind of recognition that he had always dreamed of. It was everything he had worked for professionally. The position would offer him the chance to travel the world, to meet influential people, and to live the life of luxury he had often fantasized about. But there was a catch. The job required him to work long hours, often traveling and making sacrifices in terms of his personal time. He would be expected to attend social events and parties that conflicted with his religious practices, and there would be times when his values would be tested. It was clear that while the job would provide him with material success, it could also slowly pull him away from his newfound spiritual life. Ali stood in front of the offer letter, his mind racing. On one hand, he felt the temptation of ambition, of worldly success, and the validation he had always sought. But on the other hand, he remembered the peace he had found in his faith, the sense of purpose that came from prioritizing his connection with Allah, and the strength he had gained from the smaller, more meaningful choices he had made. He sat down, closing his eyes in deep thought. He knew that this decision wasn't just about a job. It was about what kind of person he wanted to be. He had spent so long searching for fulfillment in the wrong places, always believing that external success would fill the void within him. Now, he understood that true success came from peace of mind, from living a life that honored his faith and his relationship with Allah. He opened his eyes, took a deep breath, and typed out a simple email declining the job offer. I believe that Allah has a plan for me, and I trust that the opportunities He brings will align with my purpose, Ali wrote. For now, I choose to stay on the path of faith and growth. He sent the email and felt a wave of relief wash over him. As Ali continued his journey of faith, he realized that each small decision, each act of kindness, and each step toward spiritual growth was shaping his future in ways he hadn't yet fully understood. His faith had become the foundation upon which he built everything else. It guided him through moments of uncertainty, and it gave him the strength to face challenges with patience and wisdom. Ali's life wasn't perfect. He still faced trials and moments of doubt, but he had learned that faith was a journey, one that required patience, perseverance, and trust in Allah's plan. And with each passing day, he felt more grounded in his purpose, knowing that true peace came from surrendering to the will of Allah. As he stood on the rooftop of his apartment one evening, looking out over the city, Ali smiled. The city around him had not changed. The hustle, the noise, and the chaos were still there. But within him there was a quiet peace, a peace that came from knowing that he was no longer lost. He had found his way back to Allah, and that was enough. Ali's life had found a new rhythm, one that balanced the spiritual and the worldly. He woke up each morning with a sense of purpose, an understanding that his faith was the compass guiding him. Yet while he had grown immensely, there was still something stirring inside him, a longing for a greater purpose. One afternoon, as he sat at a cafe with a close friend, Rania, the conversation turned to community service. Rania, a longtime friend from university, had been volunteering at a local charity for refugees. She had always been deeply involved in humanitarian efforts, dedicating a significant portion of her life to helping those in need. Ali, Rania said, her voice full of passion, there's so much to be done. You have a heart that could make a difference. Have you ever thought about volunteering, helping others, especially those who have been displaced, struggling to survive? Ali hesitated. Helping others had always been important to him, but he had never really felt the calling to commit fully to it. His focus had been primarily on his personal spiritual journey, and he had assumed that his small acts of kindness at work or with friends were enough. But Ranya's words echoed in his mind. The Prophet Muhammad said, "The best of people are those who are most beneficial to others." She had quoted this hadith before, and it had always resonated with him. It reminded him that faith was not just about personal growth, but about giving back, about becoming a source of good in the world. After much contemplation, Ali decided to take a step toward fulfilling this calling. He contacted the charity Rania worked with and offered to volunteer his time. He realized that helping others was a key part of his spiritual development, and he knew it would challenge him in new ways, pushing him to grow beyond his comfort zone. The first day at the charity was eye-opening. Ali found himself working with refugees who had fled war, persecution, and hardship. Their stories were heartbreaking. Families torn apart, lives uprooted, children left without homes. The experience was nothing like he had imagined. The faces of these people, the pain they carried, weighed heavily on his heart. But it was in this hardship that Ali saw the power of compassion. He began to understand that true charity wasn't just about giving money or food. It was about giving time, offering a listening ear, and extending kindness in a world that often felt indifferent to suffering. One evening, Ali was assigned to help an elderly woman named Fatima, who had been in the refugee camp for months. She had lost everything in the conflict that had torn her home country apart. Her husband had died, and her children were scattered across various parts of the world, leaving her alone in the unfamiliar environment of the camp. Ali sat with her for hours, listening to her stories. There was so much pain in her voice, but there was also a sense of strength, of resilience. Despite her losses, Fatima had not given up on life. She still prayed every day, still held on to her faith in Allah. As the evening passed, Fatima looked at Ali and said, "You have kind eyes, my son. You remind me of the young men from my village, those who would stay by my side when I was ill, helping me when no one else would." Ali's heart swelled with emotion. He had never seen someone with so much loss still have so much faith, so much hope. In that moment he realized something profound. Helping others wasn't just about alleviating their material needs. It was about providing them with dignity, hope, and a sense of belonging. Weeks went by and Ali continued to volunteer at the charity, growing closer to the people he served. The impact of his work was beginning to ripple through his life. He had always prided himself on his intelligence and success in his career, but working with the refugees had shown him a new kind of strength, one that was built on humility, patience, and service to others. It wasn't easy. Some days the pain of seeing so many people in need was overwhelming, but he learned to cope with it by focusing on the small victories, the moments when he saw a smile, the days when someone found comfort in his presence, the children who laughed because they had been given a small gift. One evening, as Ali was leaving the center, a young boy ran up to him, holding a small tattered Quran in his hands. The boy, no older than 10, looked up at Ali and said, "This is for you. My mother said you are good to us. She says you remind her of someone from the stories. She says you have a kind heart just like the Prophet Muhammad Pa." Ali's heart sank. He had never thought of himself in those terms. He had simply wanted to help, to serve where he could. Yet, in that small boy's eyes, he saw the reflection of the values he had been trying to embody. "I'm not like the Prophet," Ali said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I try to follow his example. I try to be kind, to help others." The boy smiled, his eyes full of sincerity. "That's what matters. You help, and that's enough." Ali's commitment to helping others would soon face its ultimate test. He received a phone call one evening informing him that his mother, who lived in another city, had fallen ill. She was in the hospital, and the doctors were unsure of how serious her condition was. Ali's heart raced, and he immediately booked a flight home to be with her. But the night before his flight, he was called to a critical meeting at the charity. There was an emergency situation. Many refugees were about to be displaced due to a government order, and the charity was struggling to manage the logistics of relocation and providing resources. Ali faced a dilemma. He could go to his mother, who needed him, or he could stay and fulfill his duties at the charity. knowing that his absence could make the difference in providing aid to those who depended on the organization. As he sat in his room, preparing his things for the flight, he reflected on everything he had learned. He remembered Fatima's words, how she had taught him the value of being present for others, of showing compassion and love in times of hardship. But he also remembered the teachings of Islam had shown that family was important, and that caring for one's parents was a form of worship. In the end, Ali made a decision that would test his faith. He chose to go to his mother, knowing that his family needed him, but also promising that he would return to the charity as soon as possible to continue the work. Ali arrived at his mother's side, and after days of uncertainty, he learned that her condition was not as serious as initially feared. She recovered quickly, and Ali had the time to reconnect with her and offer her comfort. Yet, in the quiet moments between hospital visits, Ali reflected on the balance between his personal responsibilities and his broader calling. He realized that the key to serving Allah and fulfilling his purpose was not about extremes, but about finding harmony between his family, his career, and his service to others. When Ali returned to the charity, he did so with a renewed sense of clarity. He now understood that his journey of faith wasn't just about personal growth, it was about navigating the complexities of life with integrity, compassion, and balance. As he sat in the mosque once more, the call to prayer echoing around him, Ali whispered a prayer of gratitude. He had not just found faith, he had found a purpose, a calling, and a path to serve both his Creator and his creation, and that was enough. The days turned into months, and Ali continued to live with purpose. His journey had been one of transformation, from a man lost in the noise of the world to someone who had found true peace in faith and service. Every step he took was guided by his relationship with Allah, and every decision he made was rooted in the values he had learned: humility, compassion, patience, and gratitude. His work at the charity had grown, and he had become a pillar of support for many of the refugees. His role wasn't just administrative anymore. He was involved in creating meaningful programs that helped these displaced individuals rebuild their lives. Through it all, Ali remained grounded in his faith. He saw every act of service as a way of worship, an opportunity to embody the teachings of Islam. One morning, as Ali walked through the charity center, he passed by Fatima, the elderly woman who had once shared her story with him. She was sitting on a bench, smiling as children played around her. She had grown stronger, more vibrant, and her faith had only deepened through the months. Seeing her, Ali was filled with a deep sense of gratitude. The people he had met along this journey, the ones whose stories had touched him the most, had changed him in ways he couldn't have imagined when he first set out on his path. "Ali," Fatima called out, her voice soft yet full of warmth, "you have done so much for us. You don't know how much your kindness has meant. You've helped us rebuild more than just our homes. You've helped us rebuild our spirits." Ali knelt down beside her, smiling softly. "It is Allah's mercy that brings us together. I am just a servant, just one who is trying to follow the path He has laid before me." Fatima reached out and gently placed her hand on his. "You are much more than that. You've been a light to us, a reminder that there is still goodness in the world. You've shown us that faith is not just about prayer, it's about action, about bringing people closer to Allah through kindness." Ali's heart swelled with emotion. He had learned so much from this woman, more than he had ever imagined. One evening, as Ali sat at home reflecting on the past few years, his phone buzzed with a message from Rania. She had invited him to speak at a community event, a gathering of young Muslims looking to find their way back to faith. She had asked him to share his journey, his struggles, and how he had rediscovered peace through Islam. At first, Ali hesitated. He had never been one to speak publicly, and he didn't feel like he had the authority to offer advice to others. But then he remembered the elderly man from the mosque, the one who had first reminded him that the journey of faith wasn't just personal. It was about sharing what you had learned, helping others along the way. With a deep breath, Ali accepted the invitation. On the day of the event, Ali stood at the front of the room, facing a crowd of eager, hopeful faces. He shared his story, how he had struggled with doubts, how he had fallen away from his faith, and how, through small acts of prayer, kindness, and service, he had rediscovered the peace he had once known. "It wasn't easy," Ali said, his voice steady but sincere. "There were times when I felt like I wasn't enough. But Allah doesn't ask for perfection, He asks for sincerity, and that's all we can give. Our sincerity, our effort, and our trust in him. As he spoke, he saw the same sense of hope in the eyes of the audience that he had once felt within himself. He realized that his journey wasn't just about him anymore. It was about those around him. He had found peace, and now it was his turn to share it. Years later, Ali would look back on his life and realize how far he had come. His career, his relationships, his community work, all of it had flourished. Not because he had chased after success, but because he had learned to put Allah first, to align his actions with his faith, and to serve others selflessly. Ali had learned that faith wasn't a destination. It was a lifelong journey, one that required patience, trust, and continuous growth. Every challenge, every test, every moment of doubt had been a stepping stone, a part of the divine plan that had led him to this place of inner peace. He was no longer the man who had searched for fulfillment in material success. He was the man who had found fulfillment in faith, in service, and in the simple acts of kindness that, over time, had shaped his character. As he stood on the rooftop of his apartment once more, the city skyline stretching before him, Ali whispered a prayer of gratitude. He had found his purpose, his peace, and his path. And no matter where life took him, he knew that as long as he stayed true to his faith, he would never be lost again. Ali's story continued to inspire others, just as he had been inspired. His life had become a testament to the power of faith, the importance of service, and the peace that comes when one surrenders to the will of Allah. He had built not just a career, but a legacy of kindness, humility, and a reminder that true success in life lies in the balance between personal growth and the service of others. And as he continued to walk through life, Ali remained a student of faith, always learning, always growing, always serving, a beacon of light for those still searching for their way. With that, Ali's journey came full circle, a life transformed by the power of faith, action, and compassion. The journey of faith, after all, never truly ends. It is a continuous path, a journey that lasts a lifetime. As time went on, Ali's life settled into a peaceful routine, but the lessons he had learned never left him. His days were filled with meaningful work, both within his career and his charitable endeavors. He had built a solid foundation for himself, a foundation rooted in faith, service, and the understanding that true fulfillment comes from giving rather than receiving. He often looked back on the man he once was, the man who felt lost, confused, and uncertain about his purpose. But now, when he glanced in the mirror, he saw someone entirely different. He saw a man who had embraced his faith wholeheartedly, who had walked through the trials and temptations of life and emerged stronger, kinder, and more compassionate. His family had noticed the change too. His mother, once concerned about his busy lifestyle and lack of direction, now saw the contentment in his eyes. Ali had not just rebuilt his relationship with Allah, but had also mended the bonds with those closest to him. One evening, as Ali sat in his apartment with his mother, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she turned to him with a soft smile. "You've come a long way, my son," she said. "You've found something more valuable than any success the world could offer." Ali smiled, his heart full. "I have, Mama. I've found peace. And it's in the simplest things, the prayers, the service, the kindness to others. That's where I find my strength." His mother nodded, her eyes filled with love and pride. "I always knew you had it in you." Ali leaned back, his heart at ease. He had found the balance between his personal ambitions and his faith. He knew now that true success was not about what he could achieve for himself, but about how he could make the world a better place for those around him. Years passed, and Ali continued to live a life of service, always striving to improve and grow. He never stopped seeking knowledge, never stopped helping others, and never stopped learning from his mistakes. He found fulfillment not in the accolades or recognition he received, but in the quiet moments of gratitude, in the knowledge that he was fulfilling his purpose. As he reached the later stages of his life, Ali often thought about the journey he had taken, the struggles, the doubts, the moments of clarity. He thought of the people he had helped, the lives he had touched, and the lessons that had shaped him. And though he had come far, he knew that his journey was not over. The path of faith was endless, always calling him to be better, to serve more, and to seek deeper understanding. In his final years, Ali passed on his wisdom to younger generations, sharing his story and the lessons he had learned along the way. He knew that his legacy would live on, not in the buildings he had helped construct or the wealth he had accumulated, but in the hearts of those he had inspired. And as he took his final breath, Ali knew that he had walked the path he was meant to walk. He had fulfilled his purpose, and his heart was at peace. The journey of faith, though long, had led him to the ultimate destination, closeness to Allah.